right. Hello again, Avengers, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is daily vlog number 304, I think. Something like that. So, today, I was wrong. Made a video a little while ago talking about everyone needs to stop being so mean. Why you gotta be so mean? Basically, I was getting really sick of everyone just being so cutthroat and so petty and despicable. And one of the examples I used was the fact that everyone was so shocked when... really? There we go. Everyone was so shocked when it was announced that Concord was coming back. If anyone doesn't know, Concord was a team-based PvP shooter. Basically, it was Sony's answer to Overwatch. And it sucked. Like, it did really poorly. The game itself, if we ignore all of the kind of politics and everything around it, the game itself was mediocre at best. The character designs were boring. The gameplay itself, you could find in a dozen other team-based shooters, and a lot of those did it better. And the one thing I don't remember hearing about it, and it's possible that I just didn't hear it, but I didn't hear about a bunch of game-crashing bugs when it first launched. Now, that's not to say that it didn't have them. I'm saying that wasn't the thing that I was hearing the most about. So, Sony refunded anyone that purchased the game, and then said in their press release, we're going to take it down, we're going to try and retool it to turn it into something that's actually useful. And everyone took these victory laps saying, oh yeah, we go woke, go broke, haha, you guys all failed. And it later came out that this is one of the most expensive games that's ever been made. They spent something like $400 million on it. And then a few weeks ago it was announced, hey, by the way, it's coming back. And everyone's like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. We canceled it, so it was supposed to be gone forever. And I made mention they spent $400 million on it. They're not just going to throw it away. Well, guess my surprise when it was announced that not only is Firewalk Studios gone, they have closed the studio, laid off the entirety of the staff, to my understanding. If I'm wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments below. But bare minimum, I know Firewalk Studios is gone. And they're the people that made, that wasted $400 million on that. And when I read that, I went, oh, well, it must mean that they're transferring the game to something else. Because again, one of my points I made before was companies don't waste $400 million. They don't. If they were just going to, say, screw this, they would have let the game run, and they wouldn't have offered refunds to everybody, and they would have recouped something off of it. The fact that they offered refunds to me meant that they were going to try and turn it into something good. Well, they said that they were permanently sunsetting Concord. Now, that phrase in and of itself is an interesting phrase. They didn't say they were canceling Concord or anything like that. They said they were permanently sunsetting it. Most people are taking that to mean it's canceled. And I don't have a reason to not believe that, but I do find it interesting that that was the phrase that they decided to use to talk about it. I don't know if that was just their corpo speak way of saying that they're canceling it without saying that they're canceling it, or if they have other plans for some way to remake some of this $400 million that it looks like they've now just officially pissed away. So, yes, I was 100% wrong about it, but I think the fact that I was wrong is a bigger deal than it sounds. And not so much the fact that I was wrong personally, but the fact that they're throwing this away means a lot more than I think people are understanding about this. So let me explain. Again, back in the 80s, Safeway, I think Walmart, and a couple other big, huge companies paid something like $80 million to effectively have psychologists create the Myers-Briggs personality type index. And the entire purpose of this was to be able to screen out employees. And it's completely worthless for that. It's also completely worthless at figuring out what your personality type is. Because there's so many different variables that they can't control for, that even just taking an MBTI test before and after breakfast will change your personality type. So it's not actually measuring your personality type. It's measuring how you feel in that particular moment about taking that particular test. It's complete malarkey. However, 40 years later, companies are still using it to screen out employees. Not because it's actually useful in any way, shape, or form, but because they paid $80 million for it. So the idea that Sony paid $400 million, which when you adjust for inflation, $80 million in the 80s comes out to roughly about $300 million nowadays. So this is more expensive than the MBTI test. And the MBTI stuff was a bunch of different corporations coming together to pay psychologists to create this. This is one company that spent $400 million on a single thing. And now, as far as we can tell, they are just ditching it. That is absolutely massive news. Obviously, running a service like that has recurring costs. And so it would be very, very easy to make the argument that, well, they crunched the numbers and they realized that running the servers was going to be more expensive than they were ever going to make any money on it. So it just wasn't worth it to let it exist for a year just to lose money on it. And theoretically, that might be true, but I don't buy that, because Blizzard made more money off of a $20 digital horse than they did off of the entirety of StarCraft 2. Free-to-play games make shit tons of money. Anything with microtransactions makes shit tons of money. If they wanted to get their money back, they could have. Running it for a year, they probably could have easily recouped a quarter to a half of the cost. And again, that's $200 million. It's a lot of money. And if they'd let it run for a couple of years, again, even if it was not popular, if you put it out there and you put microtransactions, the thing that people don't understand about microtransactions, and one of the reasons why they are a despicable thing, is microtransactions don't actually exist on a normal supply-demand curve. What I mean by that is, in general, the way that you can kind of figure out if something is going to be profitable is you create a very simple supply-demand curve. And in order for something to actually make you money, there has to be some sort of demand for it. The demand could be, hey, it's a game. Like, just existing as a video game will create some demand. And the entire purpose of marketing is to increase demand. Find ways to increase demand. Tie it to this political message so that people buy it, not to play the damn game, but to send a message to someone. Or, get this celebrity to endorse it so people play it because they like this celebrity. Or get PewDiePie to play it and take the piss out of it So everybody buys it so that they can feel like they are PewDiePie making fun of this dog shit game. There's lots of different ways to create demand, and marketing has existed long enough that I have seen a lot of marketing campaigns for literal piles of shit that have been incredibly successful. And Sony just paid $400 million. They have got the money for a good marketing team. So the idea that, well, it was just not going to be profitable doesn't make sense to me. Because there's so many different ways. It was never going to be popular. Oh, and let's go back to the idea of microtransactions. So microtransactions don't exist on your standard supply demand curve because they don't rely on demand to get people to purchase them. They actually work using gambling mechanics, and they prey on people with poor impulse control. They've done studies, and it's like less than 1% of users of most mobile games with microtransactions in them make up like 99% of the revenue of those games. Like it's absolutely crazy. The idea of a whale is 100% how these games make money, and they don't just make a little bit of money. They don't just break even. They make ungodly, disgusting amounts of money in the exact same way that casinos make ungodly, disgusting amounts of money by doing the exact same thing. Microtransactions prey on the exact same impulse control issues that casinos do, and casinos basically print money. Like, they're just unbelievably profitable. As long as you can get people in. And again, there's a billion different ways to get people into a game. Free to play is generally the easiest thing. Pay a couple streamers to stream the game and make fun of it or something like that, and you will see numbers uptick. And you will eventually find somebody that gets involved with the game that has a decent amount of money and no impulse control, and you've made your money back. So, yeah, the idea that they just looked at the numbers and like, no, there's no way that this could, there's no way that this could make money. It's not a thing. They could have made a decent portion of their investment back. And if they'd actually invested in the game itself and turned it into something that was good, there's a very good chance that it could have been a popular game. It wasn't going to be with Firewalk Studios at the head. Firewalk Studios, after seeing the game that they put out and then all the responses that all the different devs and artists and stuff like that made after the game bombed, Firewalk Studios was a dumpster fire. The company had to go. They were so incredibly inept and so incredibly incapable of the bare minimum of being able to do their job that there was no possible way that they could have turned the game into something good. So it doesn't surprise me that they ditched the company. Ditching the entire product is the thing that tells me that there's something bigger going on there. You don't write off $400 million just because, oh, well, it's going to be too hard for us to make money. No, you can make money real easy. It's not hard. Something else has to be going on behind the scenes, and it has to be massive in order to piss away that much money. Again, 40 years companies have been using this completely debunked bad science to waste people's time and to waste their own employees' times because they have to find ways to integrate that into their own systems. It is costing them money to use this MBTI bullshit, and they've been using it for 40 years because they spent $80 million on it. That's how, the whole sunken cost fallacy, it's not a fallacy in business. There are a lot of businesses that go belly up because they simply can't afford to ditch a bad idea that they spend a lot of money on. And it's not like the hubris of one person where it's going, no, we're going to make it work. the problem is if you spend a lot of money and then something fails publicly, your career is over. So you have to be able to come up with a way to justify that it wasn't actually $80 million wasted. We got this much use out of it, and simply using something for a long time, even if it's completely pointless, even if it costs you money, being able to say, well, yeah, I was part of the team that spent $80 million to create this completely awful thing that's completely pointless. But we used it for 40 years. That instantly makes it okay. Despite the fact that you fucked over your own company, you fucked over a bunch of other companies, you fucked over your employees, you have completely destroyed. This is how the business world works. When something goes wrong, somebody gets blamed for it. And if it's a big enough deal, they never work again. They have to switch to a completely different field. So that's why there's always this sunken cost fallacy thing going on in businesses. I have seen so many businesses just clinging to these unbelievably stupid things that they've put out simply because, well, we spent a lot of money on it and I can't afford to have that much money going to waste being attached to my name. So the fact that $400 million is being pissed away now is a really, really big deal. Either somebody is going to go down and they're going to go down hard. Like never work again kind of hard. Like do you want fries with that kind of job change? Because nobody will touch them. Or there's something else going on behind the scenes. Part of me wonders if it isn't not just the really bad press that the development team created by not only attacking everybody that critiqued the game. Whether the critiques were justified or not, you don't go attacking your audience. It's a monumentally stupid thing to do. And they didn't just attack their audience. They had full-blown meltdowns in extremely public places. I remember reading one like tweet series where somebody was talking about the refunds happening for Concord, and one of the, I believe they were one of the artists working on it. I don't know what part of the art. I think they were a character designer. Went on this little tirade. They're like, hey, can you guys really stop talking about this? There are a lot of us now that have no idea what the future is going to hold, and quite a few of us are wondering if we even want to work in this field. And the idea that one bad interaction, even if that interaction from a business standpoint, even if that interaction results in you losing your job, means that you're never going to work in the field again, is a really, really bad image to put forward. I used to do staffing for a couple different businesses I worked for. And so interview process, really good tip. If you are interviewing for a position and they ask you why you left your previous job, never, under any circumstances, badmouth your old job. Ever. Because what the interviewer is thinking when you're going, oh God, the place was so poorly run. Like my manager was a complete moron. He was constantly micromanaging everything that happened. And they were also, like, I probably shouldn't say this, but they were also kind of flirting with violating labor laws and stuff like that. And I didn't want to be anywhere near that, so I left. What the interview is thinking, oh, if this person interviews for another job ever, they're going to badmouth us. And that information could get out and be a PR nightmare for us. Let's just not give them a chance to badmouth us. Even a completely ethical company, which doesn't technically exist, but a really well-run company that really doesn't have skeletons in their closet is not going to take the chance on someone like that. So, and another thing that's I don't know if it's a relatively common question anymore, but there will almost always be questions about how you deal with adversity or a time that you failed in something that you're doing, because they want to be able to see, because everyone's going to screw up, everyone's going to fail sometime. And so they want to see how your particular mind deals with a failure, because it's inevitable. You're going to fail. Something is going to go wrong. And people going very, very public about the idea. I was like, well, if I get fired, then I'm never going to work in this field again. Just shows to everyone that these people are not people you want to work with, because failure is common. Getting fired is relatively common. I wonder, I'm going to see if there's any statistics on this. Let's see, what percentage of workers have been fired? Let's see what we've got here. Yeah, so over 40% of Americans have been fired at least once in their career. Nearly half of the workforce have been fired. Not quit, not changed jobs, not laid off, fired. There's a very, very big difference between being laid off or quitting your job and being fired. It's one of the things that is, again, in a staffing situation, if I'm asking you, why did you leave your last job? Most people will not say, oh, I was fired. But you can, one of the really common things when you're getting ready to the point that you're going to be making a job offer, you will start calling previous employers that they had. The conversation is relatively simple. You go, hey, my name is Trainer Jody. I work for this company. We have an applicant here named, Stu. And Stu says that they worked for your company. I'm just calling to check out their references. So can I speak to Stu's former manager? Can you confirm that they did work there? And there's actually quite a few laws about what you are and aren't allowed to say. A lot of people will claim that you're not allowed to say anything negative about an employee, because it turns into tortious interference with work, or there's a legal term for it. Basically, blackballing is technically illegal in most states. Doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, but you have to do it in a very, very creative ways. If you're just lying about people, that can actually get you sued for big, big damages. But that's not actually what the law says. The only time you can get in trouble is if you say either misleading statements or untrue statements, or technically true statements that you can't prove. As long as you have proof and what you're saying is true, you can say anything you want. It just has to be true, and you have to be able to prove it. And good managers will document everything. So part of that conversation is always, these are the things that go, hey, can you confirm that this person worked there? Yes. All right. Can you confirm why they left? Is the general phrase that you will use. And the phrase that is generally accepted is, oh, they decided to leave means they quit. Or we decided to terminate their employment means they were fired. And if they were fired, the follow-up question is always, oh, what happened? And most businesses, because a lot of people still believe that idea of, well, you can't say anything bad, will do something around the effect, well, we were... we had some general issues with this and this and this. They won't go into specifics, but they'll just say, well, they weren't quite meeting the work quotas that we were looking for, something like that. It'll generally be relatively bland. But once you start making relationships with other companies, which is extremely common in retail in particular, all the managers know each other. Even managers that work at competing stores, The only way that you get raises once you get to about the store manager level, they will stop giving you raises. Whatever, when you get your first store, whatever your pay is, when you get that store, is what your pay is going to be until you leave that company. And so the way that most store managers are able to make more money is they go to different competing businesses. And so because of that, a lot of store managers in retail all know each other in some way because a lot of them worked with each other when they were at different companies. It's extremely common. Even with non-compete agreements, you just kind of go to a different field. Like maybe you worked in office supplies and then you go to like a hardware store. That's not technically competing. They sell two very, very different products. And by the time your non-compete is done with the office supply store, you're starting to look for a new job working at the hardware store, and you just kind of go like that. It's how it works. It's how the industry works. So getting fired is a really, really common thing. To get back to that, again, over 40% of Americans have been fired. So the fact that these people were melting down and going, well, I may never work in this field again, shows that they are not the kind of people that you want to hire because they can't deal with adversity. There are going to be situations where you get fired for a completely justified reason, and it's technically nobody's fault. Something bad happened, you happened to be involved with it, and the company had no choice but to fire you. Nobody's at fault. Nobody did anything wrong. It's just how the world works. Stuff like that happens every single day of the week and twice on Tuesdays. So yeah, like just getting back to this, part of me wonders if these massive public meltdowns were creating such a negative environment and just a huge PR storm for Sony that even if they could have made their money back, these employees were so dangerous to the company because of they're attacking the fans. They're doing these massive meltdowns that makes the company look really, really bad. Part of me wonders if this was just them going, okay, we cannot afford to have this liability connected with us in any way, shape, or form. They've got to go. But that still doesn't explain why they would completely ditch Concord. Again, what was it? There was after the whole Annapurna thing. If anyone's unfamiliar with that, Annapurna Interactive was a publishing company for a bunch of indie games, and they like half the stuff that they touched turned to gold. They helped publish. They didn't develop, but they would work with developers to help publish so many amazing games. There was a shakeup at the company, and literally the entire company quit. What they ended up doing is they just transferred a bunch of contracts to different people. And that tends to be really, really common. What was it? There was another video game that was getting developed. It might have been Veilguard. Now that I'm thinking about it, but if you can think of an example of this, put it in the comments down below. But there was another video game where they just closed the studio itself, and then they just transferred the game development to a completely different studio. And that happens all the time because they can't afford to keep that studio open for whatever reason, but they still want to get the thing out. So again, in my gut, something tells me something big is going on behind the scenes at Sony, and that it's the only explanation I can come up with for why they would piss away $400 million. Unless there is some tax break they're getting by throwing this game away, like the whole Wile E. Coyote versus Acme, or Acme versus Wile E. Coyote, whatever it was, where Warner Brothers basically made an entire movie and then shelved it because they got a tax cut for doing it. Unless there's something involved like that, I don't understand why they would be getting rid of it, because again, they can make money off of it. It's never, unless again they invest probably another 100 to 200 million into the game. It's never going to be a blockbuster game. It's never going to compete with Overwatch or CS:GO or anything. But they could have made money off of it. They could have made a decent amount of money. It would have been somewhat unethical, but let's be perfectly honest. Sony has never been known as a particularly ethical company. So I sincerely doubt they're like, well, we're not going to put microtransactions in it. No, they were 100% going to do that, and they were going to make a shit ton of money off of it. So, yeah, like I said, I was wrong, obviously, but my gut tells me something big is happening. You don't piss away 400 million like that. And part of it has to do with Firewatch just being so incredibly inept and so incredibly incapable of just existing in a professional environment. But it can't be solely that. Because if it was just Firewatch, they would have just fired, get rid of the company, get rid of everybody involved in it, and then given it to another developer. And I guess maybe if they just didn't have, but even then maybe if they just didn't have the developers to be able to do anything with it, because they're making other games. And there was no way they were going to be able to sell the Concord IP, like license it out to like a third-party developer and go, hey, turn this into something good. Nobody's going to touch that with an 11-foot pole. It's just not worth it. So maybe that's it, but my gut tells me that something big's going on. Anyway, interested to hear what you guys think. Did any of my audience, did you guys actually play Concord? Was it as bad as people claimed it was, or was it blown out of proportion? I watched a little bit of gameplay footage of it, very, very little. And most of the reviews after you got past this is woke crap, after you got past that nonsense, a lot of the commentary was, the game is just really mediocre. Like, everything you can do in this game, you can do in another game just better. So, yeah, let me know if anyone actually played Concord and what your opinions on it were. Anyway, that's all for me today. I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.